Greetings everyone, I'm Kevin and today I'm going to wrap up my June reading. Then we're moving on to the next queer book that I have on this list, and this is about a trans woman, or a trans girl, because she is a teenager, so a trans girl. And it is Sovereign by April Daniels. I love this series. This is the story of Denny, who is a trans girl, and this is the second book in a series, so I won't talk too much about this, but the story, this series called the Nemesis series. This is Nemesis book 2. The first book in the series is Dreadnought, which I absolutely love this book. I own it too, but I didn't think to bring it with me to my couch. Anyways, this is the story of Jenny, who is a trans girl, and out of nowhere, this world where she lives in this alternate US. Dreadnought, who is the biggest and most famous and the strongest superhero, dies at her feet, and because she is there watching him die and she's trying to help him, he transfers all of his powers to her. And as you see with superheroes, when they get their powers, their bodies usually change. And a famous example, Spider-Man, he gets bitten and suddenly he is all muscly and stuff. She goes through that kind of transition, but instead her body transitions to that of a biological woman's, but not completely. So she goes through the medical transitions that a trans girl would go through. So she gets chest, and her genitals change as well to that of a biological woman's. Her DNA doesn't change, because why should it? Your chromosomes don't determine your gender, so that doesn't matter. And so she gets the body that she deserves. That sounds so weird. She gets the body of her authentic self, and she gets swept into this superhero thing, and she's like, what am I gonna do? What am I supposed to do? And stuff. And this takes off right after the events in the first book. Maybe there's a little gap, but it's pretty much directly after. And there is a romance in this book, a female romance, which is really cute, really cute. I love that girl. I don't want to say names. I don't want to spoil anything for those of you who have not read this. I love this. I know that this series has gotten some critique for being unrealistic, that Dani and the reasons why she feels that she is a woman is kind of stereotypical feminine things, but I don't see that. And as a trans person, it's very difficult to say this is a list of things that make me the gender that I identify as. There is no such thing. It's just a feeling that we have, that what we have and what we are bodily, physically, it's not right. It's something that it shouldn't be. Going through puberty, it's my body changes in a way that it's not supposed to, but I can't stop it. And some things, Dani says that she feels like a woman when she crosses her legs and stuff. And I get that, because feeling the gender that you identify as and that you are doesn't have to be that you feel that gender because of a certain thing, because there is no such thing. You can't concretely put a finger on it and say this is why I identify as the gender that I am. But instead, as a trans person, you find things and you're this is something that makes me feel who I am. This is something that feels I am who I was supposed to be. When I do this thing, I know who I am, and I feel my authentic self. But not everyone can, look at themselves in the mirror and be this is what I'm supposed to look like. As a trans person, you don't have the body parts. You weren't born with the body parts that you're supposed to have. So it's what things do you find in yourself that make you feel like this is who I'm supposed to be? You can't really do that. Like, you trust who you are and you have a feeling in yourself that you feel like this is who I am. I am a boy, Danny is a girl, and we find different ways to kind of prove it to ourselves in a way, because it's a long journey of self-doubt. Like, why do I want to be this thing when I can just be comfortable with the body I am in? Like, because I'm not supposed to have this body, essentially. So I understand the critique that the trans story in this, it is about a trans girl, so it is very much to do with trans things. Like, I get that people find it like stereotypical in the way that she connects herself to being a girl. For cis women, feels like stereotypical and negative and stuff like that. It's just like, for me personally, sometimes for me, what clothes I wear and if I put on makeup and stuff like that, it doesn't have anything to do with me bodily. Like, my physical body is the thing that makes me feel like this isn't what I'm supposed to be. And like, having makeup doesn't determine your gender. For some people, it can make themselves feel more as the gender they are. Like, for some men, they wear a beard because a beard makes them feel more masculine. That doesn't mean that the men who do not have a beard aren't men. It just means that for some, it's something that connects them with who they are. And so for trans women, some trans women use makeup because it makes them feel like the woman they are. And some trans women don't. You know, there are trans women who are tomboys. The only thing that trans really says is your body, your physical body. Like, what body parts you have that you are not supposed to have, and vice versa. It doesn't have anything to do with your gender expression, even though it can. And usually trans people prefer to present themselves as the gender they identify as. But what that means to individual people are different. Trans women don't have to wear dresses or skirts to be women. They can wear, jeans just like any other woman can. But for some trans women, wearing a skirt feels good. Like, it feels like something we call gender euphoria. Because we're so used to gender dysphoria, which is not feeling comfortable in our bodies because our bodies aren't what they should be. It's like, if you're a trans guy and you have to be like very conscious that you have chest that are bigger than other boys, and it's just like you feel really big discomfort and you want to hide it and stuff like that. That's gender dysphoria. And so when you get top surgery and you get a flat chest, that is gender euphoria, when you feel like, I don't have to hide this. Like, I can go without a shirt if I want to. I don't have to have anything that pressures my lungs together, basically. And like, what we find in ourselves and around us that make us feel better with who we are and makes us feel like this is who I was meant to be and this is who I'm supposed to be. Those can be small things like crossing your legs, putting makeup on. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. And those are just as valid as for people to wear clothes that they associate with the gender they identify as. This was just like a whole discussion on like the trans thing, but I really love this series. I gave this book 4 stars. I gave the first book 5 stars. Don't ask me why I gave this less. This was a lot more difficult to read because the transphobia in this was horrible. Like, there are things in this book that Danny goes through that are horrible and really difficult to read, but essentially, like, this book is 4 stars. I love this. Can't wait for the 3rd book. We don't have a release date. We don't have a title. We have nothing. Can't wait to find out something. The next book is a chunker, and it is Priory of the Orange Tree with its 804 pages. I buddy read this with Anna from Book Dreamers Alley and Sunny from Sunny. I will have them linked down below so you can check them out. I gave this 3 stars. I'm just gonna say that. I think my main issue with this book isn't the fact that it was long. It was the fact that there were too many characters and too much like happening. I think if I would have gone into this book with a piece of paper, making like a mind map of the kingdoms, the characters, who is who, stuff like that, I realized very quickly that, oh my god, I confused a lot of these characters so much that it was just like, who is who? Like, wait, like, I was just very confused with a lot of things happening. Like, who is who was the main issue. And there were a lot of things that were just too much going on or too little going on. There was a very long time in this book that I felt like not a lot of things were happening. And then it picked up and then too much was happening. And this was just a big mess for me. Like this felt very messy. And there were things with the Queendom of Enos that I felt was a little bit like, I don't know about this. And stuff like that. So I essentially gave this 3 stars. I did enjoy it, but I don't feel like I took a lot away from it. I really enjoyed the whole thing with the dragons and what different parts of the world thought about dragons. Like, I really enjoyed that part. But sitting here thinking about the book, there was too much going on, and I can't really retell anything in this except for the ending. Like, the ending is the only thing that was very clear, who did what was happening and stuff like that. And a lot of things in this book, I'm very, like, there was just a lot of things happening that I can't, sort my feelings and my thoughts. I don't usually read adult fantasy, I should also say that, but I gave this book 3 stars. The next book I read was Crazy Rich Asians, and I gave this book 3 stars. I have a lot of feelings about this book. I read this book for the opposite reason of why I read The Notebook. I read this book because for the punishment prompt, read a book that was turned into a loved movie. I love the movie Crazy Rich Asians. I think that movie is absolutely fantastic. My issue with the book, like, I think this was very interesting, and I did feel like I was there with the characters, and like all of that was really interesting. And there was like a lot of things in this book that I really enjoyed. I love that we followed a lot of characters and seeing how they were impacted by the whole like thing that everyone are supposed to be rich, everyone are supposed to wear very expensive things and have these, glamorous lives, and how different people in Singapore were affected by that and what they did to kind of get it and to be better and to be the most glamorous and at the top of the whole thing. Like, I really enjoyed all of that. But there were a lot of things in this book that I felt was the movie, I should say also, like, what I love about the movie is a rom-com. The book isn't a rom-com. The book is more of a contemporary about the high-profile people of Singapore. The relationship between Nick and Rachel isn't in the center of the book. The book is about Crazy Rich Asians, as the title suggests, which is not what I expected. And I did enjoy reading about like all of them. Like, I didn't feel more than that. Like, I felt like, yeah, this was a fun book to read. And then like after reading it, I was like, do I want to reread this? No. Do I want to read a sequel? No. So I can't give it a higher rating than a 3-star because like it was fun, it was nice, it was enjoying, it was entertaining, but it wasn't more than that. So I gave it a 3-star. Like, that's why. The next book I read was Meet Cute Club by Jack Harbon. I gave this book 5 stars. Absolutely loved this. This is a romance between Jordan and Rex. Jordan is kind of like, he loves romance novels, especially paranormal romance novels. He has a favorite author who just got out a paranormal romance, and he has this book club called the Meet Cute Club, where he and other people talk about romance novels. And Rex, they met at this bookstore that Jordan goes to, and Rex worked there part-time, and Rex is like, why are you reading like books that are for grandmas? Because romance books apparently are for grandmas. And here I was all along thinking I was 24 years old when I should actually be retired. Rex got kind of like intrigued by Jordan and his like love and passion for romance. So Rex decided, hey, I'm gonna join the club. And that's where a lot of things kick off. It is kind of like an opposites attract romance, and this whole book is about that. Like, this is a book about books. This is a romance book about romance books. So there are a lot of things in this book that are kind of like, you know, nods towards the romance genre, which I thought was really fun. Like, I love when books are kind of like meta in that way. And the characters, I really love this. The characters, the relationship, the progression of it was really nice. It's a short but fun read. And Rex is also very relatable. He has a toxic parent. He doesn't have a relationship to his dad because the dad cheated on his mom with a woman, and the woman got pregnant, and Rex got his baby sister that way, and then the dad cheated on that woman and just does not care about people at all. So Rex has a lot of issues himself due to his dad. He has a lot of daddy issues. Like, I relate to issues that caused by a parent or parents, so like I get it. But this was a very cute book, very fun. The ending is very, very cheesy, but I loved it. Like, in this book, it worked for me. And this was just like, I should also say, like, this is a male romance between these two boys. It was really fun. Like, this was just a really, really fun, entertaining book. I loved it. Swoon-worthy. The characters, amazing. The banter between them, amazing. 5 stars, obviously. Then the next book I read is This Time Will Be Different by Misa Sugiura. This is a YA novel about CJ, and she has nothing going for her in life. She doesn't know what to do with her life. She doesn't have a passion. She's not really interested in anything, and she feels like she fails at everything. She's not good at anything is what she feels. And her mom is not fine with that. Like, her mom is like this Japanese woman who is very... And her mom is like this Japanese woman who is very like high ranked in her work. She's a very like driven and powerful woman who works at this like big company. She's a very like important woman in that company. And the only thing that CJ really has going for her is Heart's Desires, which is the family flower shop that she is kind of like an apprentice at, where her aunt, the aunt is kind of like in charge of this flower shop, and Cedric gets to be there and work there and stuff. And her aunt gets in like another apprentice called Owen, and Cedric get kind of like close and become friends very quickly and things like that. And the thing about this flower shop is that during World War II, when Japanese were kind of like taken away from their homes and brought into camps. Like, here they're called internment camps. There is like this big white family called the McAllisters that back then, when the Japanese were rounded up and taken to camp during World War II, after Pearl Harbor, that incident, McAllister paid a very, very small amount of money to buy property owned by the Japanese, which was like basically they got nothing. Like they got like a fragment of what that thing was actually worth. And so the McAllisters got a lot of money from that, and they're very wealthy and powerful today in this community and this kind of like this town where they live, where this book takes place. The school is named after the McAllisters, for example. And there is kind of like this flower shop that CJ and her aunt and Owen are like working in isn't doing very well, and CJ's mom is like, if you can't get this like up and running with like a stable economy until like April, then we're selling this to the McAllisters. And CJ is very like, we can't sell it to the people who took it when our family were taken to camp. Like, we can't do that. And like that starts off like a big like social activism thing for CJ. She kind of begins a movement that is against the McAllisters and to kind of get reparations from what happened during the 1940s when the Japanese were taking camp. That because apparently from a magazine expose on the McAllisters, a lot of things that the McAllisters got money from were originally owned by Japanese, that the McAllisters paid a very, very tiny bit of money for, and then made into like these big things that got them a lot of money. And the school was originally, the land where the school was built was originally owned by Japanese men. And so the school and the students led by CJ wants the school renamed after that Japanese man. And there are a lot of like things about that, like the Japanese American students want justice, and they want reparations for the families of these Japanese people who were like, their things were technically stolen. They were paid for by such a small amount of money that it wasn't like worth anything. Like that amount of money was so small, it was basically nothing. And CJ finds her passion in doing this like social activism, and like I love that whole thing. And what I also enjoy about CJ is that she is an unlikable character. If you've like watched the show Never Have I Ever, CJ reminds me a lot of the lead in that show. Like very like self-centered and kind of rude and stuff, and she has a best friend who is gay, and she's going through a lot because of that, like with a girl. And CJ is kind of rude and mean to a lot of people, and she doesn't look that far behind herself. So she hurts a lot of people, and she reminded me a lot of the main character in Never Have I Ever. It's been a long time since I saw that show. I don't remember the character's name. Davy. I think her name was Davy. I just remembered that. Like, wow. But she reminds me a lot about that character, so that you have like a view of what this will be. Kind of, this is first person. So the whole story is in CJ's perspective. So if you watched Never Have I Ever and that main character, Davy, drew you nuts, maybe you won't like this because they are similar in that way. But I really love this book. Really enjoyed it. There were a few things in this that I was like, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And like, it was very fun. Apparently, I love reading about social activism and like justice for past problems and stuff. Really enjoyed it. Gave it 5 stars. The last book on this list is another sequel, and it is Dokkaebi Vicious Spirits by Cat Cho. This is the second book. It says companion, but it is not a companion novel. It is a sequel to Gumiho Wicked Fox, also by Cat Cho, obviously. The thing with this is that because it says companion, I felt that, okay, so it's going to be the same world, but not necessarily same characters. Like, companion to me means you don't have to read the first book to read this. But this book literally takes place right after the events of the first book, Gumiho Wicked Fox. And the characters that are central in that book are also central here. So if you read this book and you haven't read Gumiho Wicked Fox, you should stop reading this and pick up that book. Because this book, there are a lot of things in this book that, like the whole beginning and the premise of this book, you will not understand if you haven't read that book. So, like, that is just, like, a big thing. Like, this is not a companion novel. Just want to say that. And, like, I went into this thinking this was a companion because it says so. It is not. But thankfully, it wasn't that long. Like, I read Gumiho Wicked Fox in February, so it's been a while. But I still remember, like, bits and pieces of that book. At least, like, I remember a lot from that book that were important. Like what I remember from that book were like helped me out with reading this book. I love the main characters in this book a lot more than in Gumi Wicked Fox. We're following Jiyun. We're not following Jiyun. We're following Junoo, who is like absolutely fantastic. He is a Dokkaebi, which is kind of like a Korean gremlin, and he is fantastic. I love him. In this book, I really understand the whole thing with, if you love K-dramas, paranormal K-dramas, you're gonna love the series. I really get that. I really get that. I love Junoo and Sujun, their romance, love it. The characters in this book, absolutely fantastic, the way they're written, and like the whole drama between them, their interactions, really fun. And the progression of Junoo and his character from beginning to end, so good, so good. And like, I don't want to say too much about this book because it is a sequel. You have to read the first book. The first book is about Myung, who is a Gumio, which is a fox with 9 tails. And she has to essentially, like, she has to eat the hearts of humans every full moon to kind of remain alive or something like that. And yeah, there is just a lot of things like going on in that book. You have to read it. I don't remember enough. I remember the ending, which was the essential part before reading this. But that book follows Myung, who is, as I said, a Gumio, a 9-tailed fox, and how she's kind of like swept into the mortal things. She doesn't really want to be a Gumio. She doesn't really want to be mortal. And she's kind of like swept into this human's life, and he is called Jiyun, and it's kind of like their romance. Cute. Didn't love it as much as this book, but you have to read that to read this. Love this, love this, love this. 5 stars, fantastic. I don't have more words. Like, also, I wish I had this as a hardcover, because this cover, because if you didn't know, like, I have 2 frames with literal hardcovers, like the dust jackets. If I have a hardcover on my bookshelf that is a naked hardcover, it's because the dust jacket is framed on my walls. So that's why. But absolutely adore this book. The romance, the world, everything, absolutely amazing. Love this. 5 stars. So that was all the books that I read in June. I had a great reading month. I didn't have a single 2 or 1 star, which I think was very, very good. I'm very happy about that. I had a lot of 3 stars, but I also had a few 5 stars, which I think is amazing. Granted, one of them was a sequel, and the I don't know what I was gonna say. That is a theme for me, I guess. But that was it. And if you enjoyed this, please leave a like. Have you read any of these? Please let me know what you thought. And I will see all of you next time. Good reading. Bye.